What's up, Zox fam? We're back with some more Etheria Restart. Now, we're going to be getting into a character overview of the Wandering Sinner Viper. This is one of the Animuses in the game that is one of very, very few. A character that is able to AoE remove buffs. Now, we're going to go ahead and jump into what his kit is able to also offer, looking at the Savage Fang. So Viper swings his Anima Blade, dealing 2 hits of 130% damage to a single enemy. The second hit has a 25% chance to inflict a turn of silence, and then he gains 1 stack of Serpent Skin. Now, of course, this comes with a unique ability called Cold-Blooded. So at the start of battle, gains 2 stacks of Serpent Skin. Now, Serpent Skin is going to be a stack that, upon reaching 4 stacks, when the passive is triggered again, the effect switches from consuming all stacks to using Scale Slash to counterattack. So this is a unique gimmick that's going to be basically proccing the skill 3. And these are basically what you're just going to be getting out of a character like Viper. Skill 1 and skill 3 usage, stacking, skill 3 usage, and rinse and repeat. Right? Now, when we actually look at the passive, the shifting scales, for Viper, friends should never be abandoned. Reduces damage taken by all allies from critical hits by 30% when any ally is attacked. It has a 12% chance to counterattack with Savage Fang when allies receive critical hits. Increases counterattack chance to 60%, and then also counterattack can only be triggered once per turn. So there's a lot that's happening here. You're getting a damage reduction. You're also making it to where when an ally is attacked, he can come and follow up with his Savage Fang, which is going to be his skill 1. And that, remember, can proc a silence, and it's also going to be further building up his Serpent Skin. And remember, the more that he's able to build up his Serpent Skin, the easier and the more times you'll have him proc his skill 3. Now, moving on into the skill 3, which is the Scale Slash, Viper launches a devastating Scale Slash, dealing 240% damage to all enemies, with a 65% chance to inflicting a 2-turn attack break and speed down, and then also has a 65% chance to dispel 2 buffs. So this is already kind of insane. Now, the thing is that some would argue, well, it's only a 65% chance. But because he basically is going to be a unit that's banking on the fact of you hitting his allies, which you probably will be doing, and even if you build him to where you're hitting him and he gets retail and is using his skill 1, it's always going to be funneling into him building up his Serpent Skin. And that is going to be allowing him to get his Scale Slash off a ton of times, which is going to allow you to see more opportunities of getting the attack break if it misses, and as well as the speed down, and then also more chances of stripping buffs, which is going to make it a absolutely astronomical ability when dealing with some of the more buff-oriented, tankier comps. Now, as far as module recommendations with a character like Viper, I would definitely recommend things like Unbreakable or even Wellspring in the very beginning, with Unbreakable giving you a 45% increase on your defense on a 12 matrix bonus, and then the Wellspring will be giving you a HP increase of 45% on a 12 matrix bonus. This is just because the main thing that you're really trying to play into is really just the fact that you're trying to strip buffs, land debuffs, and you have to be able to take on hits. That's one of the biggest things. So, of course, with that, you also can take advantage of sets like the Bramble set, because with this is going to give you a defense increase of 10%, and Animus has a 25% chance to counterattack with a basic attack when hit. Now, the other sets that you can also build into is things like Bloodbath, where Bloodbath is going to make it to where you get an effect res increase of 18%, and when taking cumulative damage greater than 20% of max HP in a turn, the excess damage is further reduced by 60%. Then later on, you'll be able to take advantage of things like Swift Smite, which will give you a little bit of speed of 15%, as well as effect accuracy of 20%. Now, when we're looking at main stats and substats that you can actually aim for a character like Viper, I would say things like HP bonus, effect res, and of course effect accuracy are going to be really big. Depending on where you're at in the game, you might have to emphasize more effect accuracy so that you're able to land your debuffs more often, and maybe even a little bit more bulk if you're finding that Viper is dying too often because of the fact that he's taking on damage, or he's being targeted because he basically procs off of his allies taking damage. Now, of course, with that, I would definitely say as far as substats, you can definitely go for things that could also scale his damage, and there's a lot of different ways that you can build Viper because of this. If you want him to do a little bit more DPS, then you probably want subs and even main stat values that go for crit rate, crit damage, or even attack. But if you're really looking to utilize him for his counterattack, keeping him alive, and really for the stripping that he does, then you want to aim for things like, for example, speed, HP, defense, effect res, and then effect accuracy, which I feel like would be a mainstay anyway. So it just ultimately depends on how exactly you want to utilize this character, which makes him fairly unique compared to a lot of other characters. Now, as far as skill prioritization, the second skill is going to be starting out with the first node increasing the damage reduction effect to 27%. The second node is going to increase the base counterattack chance to 12%. The third one is going to increase damage reduction effect to 30%. And the last one here will increase the counterattack chance when receiving crit hits to 60%. Then next will actually be the skill 3, where you're going to be increasing the chance of inflicting the attack break in the speed down to 65%. The next one will increase the damage multiplier to 240%. The third one will increase the number of buffs dispelled to 2 buffs. And then the last one will reduce the skill cooldown by 1 turn. And then lastly, you have the skill 1, which is going to increase the damage multiplier to 120%. You have the second node, which increases the chance of inflicting silence to 25%. The third one increases damage multiplier to 130%. And the final one, at the start of the battle, Viper gains immediately 2 stacks of Serpent Skin. Now, as far as shell recommendations, I would definitely say starting out in Shadow Runner, you're going to have the Unbridled Science. So after the owner takes action, increases the strike prep by 30%. Then moving along over to Kururu, you're going to have Star. So before the owner takes action, reduces their next skill cooldown by 1 turn. And then, of course, in scenarios where you need to remove debuffs, Mermaid Princess, before the owner takes action, if the owner, Animus, has debuffs, purifies 2 of those debuffs. Then, of course, moving on to Phoebian, you're going to have ones like, for example, the Black Flag, which is going to make it to where if the owner takes action or after they take action, follows up on the main target and deals 120% damage, applying a 2-turn speed up buff on the owner Animus and increasing strike prep by 20%. Then, of course, from here, you have Whitney, where Whitney is going to have the Shanhai Jing. So for every 3 actions accumulated by enemy units, increases the owner's strike prep by 20% and can be triggered up to 1 time per turn. From there, you're also going to have Nico Nana, who's going to be able to provide you with a couple of different ones here. Gigabyte, so for every 3 actions accumulated by enemy units, increases the owner's strike prep by 30%. It can be triggered up to 1 time per turn. You also have Alicorn, so before the owner takes action, if the owner has debuffs, dispels 2 debuffs, and for every 1 debuff dispelled, recovers 8% max HP. And then, of course, lastly, we have the infamous Astarde, who's going to be able to offer you ones like, for example, the Codex of Magic, which is going to make it to where you, before the owner acts, unleashes the owner Animus's full potential, making their next skill cooldown cost no cooldown. And then you can also utilize ones like, for example, the Law of Silence, which at the start of battle puts the owner Animus in 1 turn of void state, and afterward, for every 4 turns, enters 1 turn of void state after the turn ends. And remember, void state basically puts a target into a non-single targetable state. So they can't be affected by single target abilities. They can still be hit by AoE, but this is a really great ability when you just want that character to be there to take on the counterattack and just making sure that your allies are getting hit. This is actually a really, really good set that you could work into a character like Viper. Now, of course, getting into our infamous pros and cons, starting out with the pros for Viper, I would definitely say that Viper is, simply put, a counterattack god. With the fact that you can have so many follow-ups happening based off of allies being hit, you can even build him to where he's able to make it proc more off of him being hit. There's so many different things that you can do to enable this character. He's actually a great counter character in PvP, especially against the tank down meta or buff meta. And with that, he's also able to land that attack break in the speed down, which is going to be super huge for you to be able to control more of the fight and taking in less damage. Now, because of the passive as well that he has, where he's basically able to reduce damage being taken from crits, this also is super huge because that makes it to where you're really able to even sustain a team comp in things that are, example, PvE oriented, where enemies might be critting you and you might have a harder time surviving. He's also an alternative or option for sustain. Now, when we're actually looking at a couple of other things as far as cons, I would definitely say that when you're looking at if you want to build him as a DPS versus building him as just a buff stripper, you will have to utilize 2 different builds. I think that, yes, you can definitely make use of his amazing proccing and follow-up attacks with your allies being attacked, but you kind of have to pick one or the other. And I really feel like this then will kind of determine where you'll be using him, if you'll be using him more in PvE versus PvP. But other than that, Viper is an excellent unit. and really is going to offer a lot of value to anyone's account that has them. So with all of that being said, hopefully this was able to give you some more insight on the Wandering Center Viper, and maybe even give you a little bit of an idea of how you can apply them to your composition. So of course, with that, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe for more Etheria Restart content like this. But that's going to be basically that with this one, guys. Everyone, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.